I've been around here for a while. I've seen Congress kick the can down the road, kick the can down the road. It's time to stop the nonsense.
Joining me now, CNN contributor Will Cain and Democratic political consultant Ed Espinoza. Guys, it sounds like Boehner stunned some in Washington. Ed, do you think this came out of left field, or has this been brewing for some time?
Well, it's a larger issue, and it's the difference between the things we say and the things we do. And if you look at a similar debate that we had in December of 2010, it had to do with the Bush tax cuts and extending those for affluent Americans. So a year later, here we are faced with an issue to extend payroll tax cuts for middle-class Americans, which basically comes out to about $100 a month, a utility bill for most people, and here we are haggling over that. This is something we have to reconcile with ourselves, particularly the GOP, and how we move so quickly on a millionaire's tax cut and yet so slowly on a middle-class tax cut. And I think that it's going to be a problem, especially heading into these early primary states like Iowa and New Hampshire, which are nice places, but very middle-class places.
What do you say, Will?
I think this is a tree falling far in the forest as far as the election and as far as strategy that Ed just talked about. I don't think it's going to have much of an effect there. If you want to say play the blame game, yeah, there's plenty to go around for everyone on this. By the way, we're not passing a payroll tax cut today, or we're having trouble passing one today, but only for a 2-month extension into February, which means we'd have this fight again in 2 months. It's not like we're fighting right now for some great victory. The larger question is, how do you pay for a payroll tax cut, right? Should it be paid for? How do you pay for it? We have to understand that payroll tax cuts deprive Social Security of its revenue, and therefore we have a disagreement over how you pay for it. That's the core of the issue. That's the crux. How do you pay for the tax cut?
And sitting here talking about...
But we didn't have an issue of paying for tax cuts a year ago. So I feel like it's disingenuous to say we want to figure out how to pay for these tax cuts, but we didn't want to figure out how to pay for the millionaire tax cuts a year ago.
Well, the thing is that here we are at the end of the year, and people are hearing yet again Congress haggling over a big issue, and it's about their paychecks. And isn't that on the top of the minds of Congress? Do you think they will continue this and perhaps cut into their holiday vacation? Go ahead.
Yeah, I would have to think, if you're asking, yeah, I would have to think that they will eventually come to some agreement over the next week or two before the new year turns. But look, as far as you're talking about people's paychecks at home, there's also the greater economic impact of this. And conservatives often talk about uncertainty, that the economy, business owners, taxpayers, consumers out there need certainty. You need to know the economic environment you're playing in. And look, whether or not we have trouble passing a payroll tax extension, or we pass one for just 2 months, you're not solving that problem. We're going to have a huge amount of uncertainty over what our tax bill will be.
Ed, final comment on this issue before we move on.
There are so many issues that tie into the payroll tax cut. We don't have a lot of time to get into all of them. I put a bunch of them up on Twitter this morning. But the bottom line is, you're right, Will, it is only a 2-month extension. But the problem is that if we don't act now, the pay cut will take effect January 1st. We need to have some sort of bridge until we can get to a larger consensus.
All right, let's talk about another issue that will probably perhaps continue to come up in Iowa, and that is the death of Kim Jong-il and the story out of North Korea. Here's some things that we heard on the campaign trail. John Huntsman calling him a tyrant. Mitt Romney says his death is an opportunity for the U.S. Perry had some of the most dire words, saying North Korea remains a nuclear power and there's a great threat that those weapons might fall into the wrong hands. Are we witnessing the birth of a new campaign issue here? We'll start with you, Will.
Well, yes. I mean, this should be an issue. This should be an issue as an illustration. We often elect presidents assuming they're like our chief legislator. We think that their platform of legislation that they'll champion or oppose is one of the most important things. And it is important, but we neglect to understand that presidents need to be prepared for the unexpected. That's what we need to be vetting for. Whether or not it's been financial crisis or terrorist attacks on our soil, you always need to be prepared for the unexpected. And having a nuclear power in North Korea, now with a huge leadership vacuum, we have no idea whether or not his son's going to be able to consolidate power, is a huge unexpected world event. And how Barack Obama handles it, or a Republican presidential candidate handles it, is a massive question we should be asking.
Ed, your thoughts?
I absolutely agree with Will. We're of like minds on this. That 3 a.m. phone call against nuclear power is something you have to be prepared for. But in hindsight, the year 2011, a bad year to be a bad guy. Mubarak, Gaddafi, Kim Jong-il, Osama bin Laden, the world is better off in that we're rid of some of these guys right now. We're not completely out of the woods yet, but it's getting better.
Yes, but certainly another big issue on the plate of the candidates as they press on toward January 3rd. Thanks so much, both of you, for your perspectives. Will Cain and Ed Espinoza. That's fair.